Hello and welcome back to Emily Cat 176. It's Friday. Yes, another week has gone past. Can't believe we're in February already. But so on Friday I talk about books. And as I have said before, I like crime fiction. That's my favourite. But I also like history. I like reading about what's happened in the past. One of the best books I think I ever read was about the Boxer War by Diane. What was her name? Diane. Oh, I've forgotten her last name. She's a historian, but that one I really liked. But the book I'm talking about today, Earthquake, the election that shook Australia. Now, I will start off by saying this is not a political channel. It's not. It's not. And I don't normally talk about politics at all. And I'm not going to talk about who I vote for or anything like that. But this book, I'm listening to it actually on Audible. It's talking about the last two elections we've had in Australia. And I know there's people that watch this channel from overseas, so I'm just going to give you a brief explanation. We're talking about federal elections. We have the same voting across the country. We have a fully independent election commission. They run the elections. The political parties cannot interfere in it at all. We have compulsory voting. Now, with the compulsory voting, it's not, you don't have to vote. You have to get your name marked off. You can go into the booth and, like, we call them donkey votes, just completely muck up your voting. Why anyone would want to do that, I don't know, because I will say I believe in voting. But we also have preferential voting. So when I go to vote, and I will this year, I will be voting in the Victorian election. So I go into the booth, I have it's House of Representatives and Senate. These are the two houses we've got. And government is always formed with the House of Representatives. We've got the Westminster system here. But I go into the booth and then I think about, they list them. There's about 6 or 8 normally. And I put a 1 next to the one I want to vote for. Then I go and I put a 2 to the next one. So I might want to really vote for A, and then I think, B's not bad, so I'll put 2. And you've got to number each one in this House of Representative sheet. The Senate is a bit different. You have above the line and below the line. So above the line, it's just got the parties. And I think you only have to do, I can't remember, is it 3 or 4? Or you can just do 1, I think. I can't remember. Or you can go below the line and you can do preferential voting there as well. You put the one you want first, and normally the pages are quite big, and you can just go and number each one. I have a family member who actually does that. Because the other thing is too, with Australia, we take voting seriously. If you don't get your name marked off, you will be fined. Now, I think this came in when we were a very smaller population, but they've kept it. So this is how government, this is how elections are run in Australia. It makes no difference on the day if I'm here in Melbourne or if I'm in Perth or I'm up in Darwin. You just do an away vote. But it's the same voting system through the whole country. And that's how we do our elections. I think we're one of the few countries that have compulsory voting. But as I said, I believe in voting. 50 beats 49 every day of the week. And one vote can make a difference. Your vote can make a difference. So this is why I'm interested in this book, because the last two elections have been very interesting. Very interesting. We currently have a federal Labor government. So the main parties in Australia are Labor and Liberals. Now, one thing with the Liberals, they're not liberal. They're a far right party. And at the moment, they're busy fighting amongst themselves to tear down the first female leader. The Nationals, they were a coalition. They've left. They're even more far right than the Liberals. They're an absolute rabble at the moment. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that. But this book is about the last two elections. Because before 2022, we did have coalition governments. But the last two have been Labor. And what I will say about the one we had last year, one Liberal MP actually muttered the phrase, "Make Australian great again." But the result of the election shows that Australia overwhelmingly rejected MAGA policies, far-right policies. Australia tends to have central governments, but this is what this book is about, the last two elections, and it is interesting. If you actually want to know more about Australian politics and Australian whatever, there is a very good, I think it's called the Sloan Report on YouTube. Young Australian guy, he talks about Australian politics. So it is interesting to me and Nikki Sather, who has written this book, she did work with former coalition governments, but she's not a fan these days. But she is a recognised journalist, and this is her book that she has written. Because Labor had a big win in 2022, in 2025, my goodness, they got 94 seats. So the Liberals and the Nationals and the crossbenchers, they've got a small amount of seats. So it's interesting to me. And this is what I'm asking. Do any of you read political books? I don't read a lot, but as I said, I'm interested in history. And this is current history of my country. And as I said, I am a participant in this because I always make sure I vote. And the other thing is too, if you go and vote in Australia, you will get a democracy sausage. Outside most of the polling booths in Australia, people set up sausage sizzles and people will buy a sausage and have that while they're waiting to vote. So, yeah, that is what I'm listening to at the moment. And, sorry, itchy nose. And it's interesting so far because, as I said, I personally believe too that every government actually needs a competent opposition, and the opposition at the moment, they are a rabble. They're just fighting amongst themselves, and from everything I read, they say that the Liberal Party, they're going to go even further far right. So that's what I am listening to. It might not be interesting to other people, but it is interesting to me because it just happened last year. So, politics, see, Australians, they don't have a high opinion of politicians, but on the whole, most people vote correctly. They fill the forms out and they put them in. And as I said, I know other countries have it differently. In England, it's first past the post. In America, there was a huge amount of people who didn't even vote. And again, that's up to you if you don't want to do it. But as I said, here in Australia, it's compulsory. And as I said, you label it 1 to 6 or 1 to 8, which means it's preferential voting. It does make a difference. And it gives a result that shows what most Australians want. So, as I said, let me know if you read about elections, if you read about the history of your country and how voting's been and the governments that govern them and whatever. I'm enjoying this because I said it is interesting. But again, this is the only time I will talk about politics, and I'm only talking about this because of the book I am reading. So enjoy your weekend, and I will be back on Monday. Bye.